Someone printing?
I'm trying to unplug my damn TV because it's distracting, and I haven't plugged my printer. So I'm on my speaker notes.
All right. Well, I think we're about ready to get started. Thanks, everybody, for coming in as people filter in. All right. We'll go ahead and get this started. So, welcome to this session of DEMOFEST 2023. We're super excited about this one. Quick introduction. So DEMOFEST is presented by Consensus. Consensus is intelligent demo automation software that helps scale pre-sales with interactive video demos. You can learn more at goconsensus.com or view the automated micro demo link at the link in the Docs tab on the right side of your screen. So we want to give a quick shout out to DEMOFEST Gives Back. So Consensus is proud to provide this event for free to all attendees. However, we would like to invite each of you to donate to our company's humanitarian organizations if you would like to. You can learn more about this and donate by visiting the DEMOFEST Gives Back booth in our virtual expo hall in the Booths tab or at the link in the Docs tab on the right side of your screen. Quick shout out to the DEMOFEST community. We invite you to join us in the DEMOFEST community on Discord. Our community is where you can connect with speakers, get exclusive access to content and events, and where the conversation will continue long after the DEMOFEST event has ended. So we encourage all attendees to join us and so many others. You can join the community at the link in the Docs tab. So a couple of housekeeping items just quickly. We encourage you to participate in today's session. And on the right side of your console, you can see a few ways to engage with us throughout the session. The chat function will allow you to engage with us as well as other attendees. Throughout the session, you may see a few polls. We encourage you to participate as your feedback is important to us. Our speakers will be taking questions from the audience at the end of the session, but we encourage you to ask questions at any time through the Q&A box. This is going to be important for this session, as much of it will just be a Q&A back and forth with the panel. If at any time you are having technical difficulties, go ahead and head to the gear at the bottom of your screen. And here you will see a help document to help troubleshoot common issues. All right, let's introduce today's panelists. Today we have with us Tony Francetic, Senior Manager, Solutions Consulting at Thomson Reuters. Lori Payne is Vice President of Global Solutions Consulting at Blackline. Brian Oehling is Global Head of Presales, SMB at SAP Concur. And Ron Whitson is Vice President of Global Presales Services at Seismic. Really excited to have you all with us. Thanks for coming today, everybody. So with that, what we're going to do is the format of this is really focused on the Q&A. So the overall thrust of this panel is talking about the essential skills for essential SEs and team members as we hire, as we go through all the staffing changes that everybody's seeing recently. So a quick word. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that we just have panelists on. A quick word about what can be some sensitive topics as we launch into this today. So we've all seen a lot of kind of what's going on LinkedIn as companies are forced to cut back on staff, as they're forced to do restructures, all kinds of things of that nature. So I want to start off by talking about what this session is not. This is not intended to be a referendum on if anybody here in the audience recently went through a downsize and maybe had to switch positions or something. This isn't intended to tell you, you know, this is what was wrong with you or anything of that nature, okay? However, at the same time, it's important to acknowledge that when leaders have to go through these kinds of changes, they're not rolling the dice to see who goes and who stays. And when it comes time to hiring new people, because we're all, many people are looking for new positions, they're not rolling the dice on that either. So here we have a panel of leaders who you can tap for all of your questions about what sets SEs apart, individual contributors apart, who are they hiring, who are they keeping, and all of those kinds of things. So once again, I will encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A side, on the side of the screen, on the right side of the screen, and we'll go ahead and launch in. We're not going to spend a lot of time on introductions. We've got short bios in the description of the session. So I think we're just going to launch in with some early questions. So let's start with the big one. When it comes to when it comes time to make decisions, let's say you're forced into a position where you've got to make some decisions on the staffing for your department. Maybe you've received a directive that you've got to do more with less. How do you decide who are the essential individual contributors that you have to have on the team versus the ones that maybe have to be let go if you have to make a decision? So let's go ahead and start. Let's go Lori first, and then we'll go Brian and Tony and Ron on this one.
Lori, you're on mute.
Oh, I think you're on mute. Yep.
I'm a professional. I know how to work.
Chad Wilson was just talking about that in the last session.
No victim to that one. What I started saying was, yeah, we really are jumping right in. I think this is an interesting topic because it is really hard to get to a point where you have to determine who's going to stay, who's going to go. And it's absolutely gut-wrenching as a leader to have to figure that out. But when it comes down to looking at, you've got to make that business decision, and it's a hard one. Some of the things that you can look at are, of course, you can look at metrics, right? If we were account execs in sales, it would be really straightforward. Are you frequently hitting your quota, and are you doing that consistently? But we are not quota carrying. You can look at metrics, you can look at revenue influence, but I caution against just looking at the hard metrics like that, because there is so much more to what makes up a really great quality solution consultant or sales engineer than just what do the metrics tell you and how they're performing. So I look for, we start with those metrics, and then you got to kind of look for those softer things that really round out the SC. Are they a big team player? Are they a lone wolf, or do they work well or play well with others? Are they engaged? Do they work on special projects? And for me, what I also look at is if we're going through some kind of reduction in force, who do we want to be the ones that are going to carry us forward for where we need to take the company now? And you can kind of create a little bit of a profile around that and figure out who fits that profile. And it comes down to some of those softer skills of who's the team player, who's willing to roll up their sleeves and dig in, who's willing to try new things, because you might have a shift in a selling motion that you then need to get people on board with. So I would start there. It's so complicated to figure out who stays, who goes, but we've got some aspects and characteristics that we can look at.
Thanks, Lori. Brian.
I would say there are a few universal truths in life. It's death, taxes, and restructuring is a new one I'm adding here. Reduction in force, restructuring, layoffs, whatever you want to call it. And we just went through that ourselves in our organization. And in this industry, I don't think anybody's immune from it. And that's just one fact. And so I've had a lot of employees come and say, when's the next shoe going to drop? We will restructure. We will always restructure. That is unfortunately what companies do. And it's fortunate also, because if we have areas of the business that aren't producing, then it's a business. We have to right-size certain areas. And so knowing that that's a universal truth, we've built kind of a principle around our organization of people, purpose, and performance. So Lori, I like what you're talking about in terms of KPIs. That's kind of the performance side. Are we helping act as a multiplier to sales? Because when we attach, we actually deliver better value. Purpose. Do you know what your job is? Do you know, are you giving back not only to others in your teams in purpose, but also back to your communities? That's something that we look at because we want to make sure we're taking our skills and giving to others, learning outside the company, and bring that back. That's the purpose. And on the people side, are you as an individual out there developing yourself? Are you engaged? Are you innovating? Right back to your point there. Are you trying to help bring greater value to the organization? And so whether it's you as a global leader or some spreadsheet jockey, that is out there making decisions for you at a much higher level, as was the case in our organization, one thing that's clear, and I'll end on this point, pre-sales is the most, if you're going to go through restructuring, I have found pre-sales to be the best profession to be in because we do bring the most value, clear value, subject matter expertise. It's hard to find us. It's expensive to replace us. And that's different when you're talking about sales. Sales, you can build up quickly and on board, but with pre-sales, we tend to weather better in these situations. Not always, but that's been something that we've seen from my perspective.
Thanks, Brian. Tony.
Yeah, I agree with all points thus far. I would kind of, I guess, add to that and say, that motivation, like that internal drive that somebody has. Laura had mentioned the lone wolf, the key performer. You can have top performers that are lone wolves, and it tends to be a little bit challenging in some regards because that's their only focus. I put a stupid tagline in my email a while back, and it's turned into kind of the mantra of our team is, how can I help? And I think even to Brian's point, right, like where do you support the sales division? Well, where do you support beyond that as well? And I think that also speaks to exactly the point you're making, Brian. Like we're a little bit more challenging to get rid of when you plug in and have a stronger foothold in influencing campaigns with marketing or validating campaigns with marketing, right, or product and roadmaps, things like that. So if you've got an internal motivation for a staff member who just wants to be that person volunteering for projects, if they're working with their peers on cross training or doing anything else that's going to benefit beyond the day-to-day demos, those are valuable too. And you don't want to discount the fact that you have a high performer. But for me, if I'm going to look at that same environment of like, who is that best person to put into the role? It's someone beyond the scope of like, okay, here's my line and there's where I'm going to stay. Like, where can I branch out and make an impact? Those are the folks that I'm looking for.
Fantastic. Ron.
Yeah, always a tough spot to clean up in, right? After all these great speakers. No, I agree, but I'm going to add one more element to it, or maybe just a different way to rephrase some of the things that were brought up. And that is the engagement of the person to the team. Are they someone who's got the camera on in team meetings? Are they contributing new ideas, and are they engaged with everybody else? If I've got to make decisions about who's staying and who's going, I want people who want to be here and want to take the team forward. And that's the best way you can show people that.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a great point. I would focusing back down in, and what we'll do with this next question was just go back in exactly the order we just went, and we'll end on Lori. How has it changed, if at all? Okay, in the last, say, year, 3 years, maybe even as much as 5 years, are there specific skill sets? Are there specific differentiators that have changed over the last little while? Maybe the broad strokes are still the same engagement? There are certain personality types. There are certain, levels of drive and so on that will always kind of differentiate top performers. But are there any things that you would say have changed over that last, as I say, year, 3 years, maybe as much as 5 year period of time? Ron, we'll start with you and then go to Tony.
Yeah, I can go further back than 5 too if you'd like, but we won't do that for sense of time. Well, no, I mean, I think we've all seen the profession of sales engineering grow. So we actually do have metrics now that can let us know how people are performing. So that's something we didn't have as little as maybe 5 years ago. I think also we've seen a big skew from the really technical skills that we need in the role to more of the soft skills. I think that's a big thing, right? As people have developed their understanding of the sales methodology, as storytelling has evolved, and we've really become guides for the buyers, I think the technical aspect has taken a little bit of a backseat to some of the soft skills that are really important. So that's what I've seen from my standpoint.
Fantastic. Tony.
Yeah, I'm wrestling with the transition of generalist to specialist. And when I first started, we only had 8 people essentially to support the entire sales division. Everybody had to be a generalist because you never knew what you were going to get. And as we've scaled the team up, and now we've got 28 solutions consultants, we specialized in a particular channel. Well, now we're coming back almost full circle to then the transition of the sales organization saying, well, we have a value in the suite of solutions that we sell. So we need to be able to talk that big picture, and not everybody can. So it's been a weird transition. That's probably the last 7 years. We went from generalist to specialist, and now we're kind of inching back towards that generalist approach to be able to tell the vision at a high level for all solutions as opposed to just a particular channel.
I want to dive a little bit deeper on that as well. Maybe when we come back through, but be thinking about, like you were talking about, kind of going broader and increasing the scope of the scope of your help, if you will. Interested in, is it going broad that is most effective? If you go deep on one section where you become a deep subject matter expert, is that another path to kind of solidifying your position in an org, or are they two paths to the same thing, or is one more valuable to the other as we go? So be thinking about that as well. Brian, changes over the last 5 years or so.
I would say 2 areas. One, and this kind of goes back to the other question of what value do you and does pre-sales bring to an organization? In a pre-sales role, whatever it is, technical, functional consultant, digital pre-sales, as we have here, cross-functional, I'll call it cross-functional multipliers. So we can't just come in and sit here and do demos all day long. We have to we're paid to be subject matter experts. And so in that, are you taking that subject matter expertise and are you helping to drive pipeline? Are you helping to contribute to product management and innovate in terms of the product so you can sell more? You can't just sit here and just focus only with a sales organization, which is naturally where we align most of the time. And the other is a digital skill set. So no, Garen has to not pay me to say that, but that's why we're all here, because we know that digital skills is important. With my subject matter expertise, I can deliver it face-to-face. I can do it in a public forum. I can do it virtually, or I can take my skill and I can build some production skills, perhaps, some authoring skills into interactive demos and deliver it through a channel like this. So that is a big area that we have invested in here to try to find multiple ways, multiple avenues to share our subject matter expertise.
I love that. All right, Lori.
Yeah, I'm glad you said the digital piece, Brian, because I just rolled off a session in DEMOFEST, and a principal SE was talking about they weren't very good at creating those videos. It's a different skill. So yes. I'm glad that you brought that up. I agree with everything that folks are saying. We went through this boom of hiring lots and lots of SEs, and we hired for that technical expertise, which is, I think, what Ron was really touching on. And now we're kind of fine tuning that a little bit more, especially over the past couple of years. So, that collaborative aspect, because we do need SEs to branch out. We do need them to do more and pick up more. Is it always the right thing to do? Maybe not, but for your organization, maybe that's what's needed. And having a team that says, well, that's not my job, is not going to carry you and your organization forward. And I think along with that is just, that it comes along with that skill set of the willingness to try, right? I'm a huge advocate of having a big growth mindset. And if you're not willing to try something new, however that business is shifting, you're going to end up with a pool of resources that aren't going to be the ones that end up getting you there. So we've kind of seen a shift back to, we're talking about those softer skills earlier, but I think they're even more important now versus the technical nature. So I definitely agree with everything my fellow panelists are saying.
Fantastic. Appreciate that. So, Tony just posted in the chat. Yeah, not my job is poison for a pre-sales team. Are we all kind of in agreement on that? Yeah, that's not something I think you honestly in any position is that really ever something you want to come out of your mouth?
I don't think so.
More so for pre-sale. So, and we actually borrowed something. We didn't steal it from, but we borrowed something from Todd Jansen over Salesforce. It's what's your best yes? So Tony, I like what you said earlier, but we've actually adopted that as a mantra for our team. Sometimes we're going to have to tell the seller no, but we're going to give them a really good yes when we do so.
Yeah.
What's your best yes? What a great frame for it. All right, so let's talk about let's dive a little bit further into this generalist versus specialist. And we've got some questions coming through that we'll get to here in just a minute. But let's talk generalist versus specialist for a minute. Is the best path to kind of anchoring in and solidifying your value to a team, because it's really what it comes down to. Is it broad scope? Is it like go narrow but deep on the specialist side to where you're just like nobody knows it as well as you do, and then scale that out? Like, what are the strategies here that you would recommend? And I'm going to let anybody jump in who has an opinion. We will have to go in order this time.
It's going to be everybody.
Go ahead, Ron.
No. I was just saying it's going to be everybody, but go ahead.
Everyone's going to have an opinion. Well, I was going to jump in because we're actually kind of similarly, I think it was Tony that said this, we're struggling with this right now. So we've made a couple of acquisitions, and they're products that are outside of our call it the generalist scope, yet we need them to also help cover the capacity of the volume that's coming in. And what we're now finding is we've got to dial that back a little bit because it's not resonating. They're not picking it up in the same manner. So we're in this battle of, do we go down this specialist route? Do we have generalists and know that at some point in that cycle, you just might need to bring in a specialist as well. And then you're doubling down on resources, which is okay if you need to build a team on a particular opportunity. But in this day and age, when we are trying to run and operate in a fairly lean manner, that can be challenging. So I think we kind of landed on, we need everyone to be a good, solid generalist, but we do need a handful of specialists for, those deeper dive in those particular opportunities where needed.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the complexity of your product set too, right? Like in our case, we've got several workflows, and those workflows are going to tell a story in their entirety, and then you're going to have those deep dives that'll come off from time to time. And Lori, you make a really good point on the staffing component of it. And I think we fight the industry at the same time, right? Gartner said for the last 2-3 years that it's a dwindling amount of time that customers spend with vendors. So we split that 15% across however many vendors they're researching. And at the same time, they're saying, oh, well, I actually prefer to have a buying team with me. So if you're going to send 3-4 people, a couple specialists and a generalist all in one meeting, we like that. But at the same time, we need to be able to staff and meet the needs of the sales division. So I think the way that I've started to look at it now is, and this is probably an unpopular opinion, but you're going to have to extend the sales cycle a little bit. And I think, what used to be one demo to rule them all and close the deal is now going to be one demo to paint the vision, and then potentially a subsequent deep dive where needed in the particular area of where the customer has additional questions.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Brian, or any input there from you on this?
Yeah, I think it does. It depends on kind of the business, the software that you run. In our situation, we have about an organization of 80 people, and this year we're going to conduct about 10,000 demos virtually, and a lot more, 3x and even greater digitally, using tools like Consensus. And so for us to have specialists is difficult. We have a subject matter expertise program because it's difficult for a product to have all of the pre-sales resources coming at them. So we have a honed communication channel of how to get to us. And then those subject matter experts help all the solutions consultants develop their functional skills around certain areas If we have a deal where we're getting stuck and we need some help, we do a pre-call plan and have a deal strategy session with that subject matter expert in it, with a sales rep and ourselves, so we can then bring it forward. And so, one of the great skills of being in pre-sales is you have to develop subject matter expertise quickly. And sometimes you have to be the expert when my favorite story is I started at a company as a solutions consultant a few years back, way back. My first day, I was at the trade show and I was representing my software at the booth. And it was my first day, but I had to be an expert. So you ask a lot of questions in that situation. But for us, we don't have the ability at the scale and pace we go to have specialists. One last thought. If you are, and we have gone that route in the past, we decided to not have that role continue. It's because the business didn't need it anymore. What is your value? As a specialist, are you able to attribute yourself to revenue? Are you able to show that you're providing that multiplier effect? Because if not, you're at risk. I'll leave it at that. So for us, we found that there wasn't a ton of value in that we needed to have that role around. So Ron, over to you. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. What we've done here is at Seismic is the field SEs are generalists, and then the specialists are on another team, our global pre-sale services team, and we jump in and help as needed. We've got architects who can go deep on the IT, InfoSec, integration, API, stuff like that. And then we've got specialists from some of the different acquisitions we've made over the last few years who can go deep in those areas. So the SE is the technical quarterback of the opportunity, but they're pulling in additional resources to help with the opportunity down the road.
Same, yeah.
I love it. Now, quick question on the digital side. So just so everybody knows, not everybody on the panel are consensus customers or anything like that. In fact, I think we're split right down the middle. So here's my question. How important is the digital side to each of you going forward as far as the skill set goes, right? The ability to kind of take that subject matter expertise and scale it out, whether it be through demo automation or some other tools that you guys use. How important is the digital side of the skill set to each of you?
I'm no stranger to saying that it's changed our sales process entirely. It was a necessity at the time we took on. So we started with Consensus 2019. Like I said, with 8 solution consultants for like a sales floor of over 200. It was an absolute necessity to be able to scale. And I think what it's done is we originally had slightly less demos the first year, and then we scaled up. And we've actually increased demos year over year, live demos, as well as consensus content demos being sent out as well. And it resulted in better qualified demos because it's a precursor to that kind of last stage closing tool. So that digital piece was beyond critical for us. And I look at it now, it's allowed us to scale because you get higher close rates, you get better revenue influence, you get all these things because the pre-sales team, which historically was doing those overview demos in a live format and might have been hit or miss, the digital component turns it into really a qualifier, disqualifier tool for the sales team. Because they're not going to engage with a 10-minute video. Right. Why are you going to spend a half an hour call with them? So, I can't speak highly enough of how much it's been a benefit to our company. And granted, I always do a caveat to that. Like, we've got a pretty wide bag of technical solutions. So it's not going to say that it's the magic pill for everybody. But at the same time, it's really been influential for us.
Go ahead, Lori.
Sorry, Brian.
You first.
Round robin it. I agree. We don't do a whole lot of digital now, right? I am one of the ones on the panel that is not a consensus customer, although a huge advocate of it. We are in a cycle trying to evaluate and, all of that good stuff. I think it's essential for how we want our profession to move forward. If you want to have any type of scale versus growth, you have to have this digital component. From a skill set perspective, most of us, even if we don't have an automation tool such as Consensus, you're probably doing some version of this just very manually, right? And that is a skill set that is either great that comes out in that recording that someone does as a one-off, or it comes across as just another, kind of harbor tour, and the messaging's not resonating. They do try to make it too perfect kind of thing, and it takes them hours and hours and hours to get something complete for, call it a 10-minute video, right? That's not scalable, doing it in a manual fashion that way. So I think upskilling or hiring for that skill is going to become important for everyone in our profession. And we do need to consider it, whether you're using a demo automation system or not. Demo automation obviously makes it much easier and scalable, and it gives you all those great insights into what's working and what's not. But even if you're trying to do something manually, my guess is some of it's falling short because you don't really have that skill set. Okay, Brian, I'm done now. Sorry, go ahead. Over to you.
We're in pre-sales, right? Chatty bunch.
Yes.
All of us. So I think the tagline I usually have out there is your buyers have evolved. Have you?
Right.
Period. And that's when we're looking at talent out there, those that have digital skills, it's an absolute differentiator because we have multiple channels that we have to distribute our subject matter expertise, as I talked about earlier. What I'm finding, though, is there is this constructive tension in the industry right now with developing a digital skill. There's a fear that digital will replace me, and instead, digital will extend your value and scale your value through multiple channels. Again, that whole thing we've been talking about. And so that another concept I have is we got to sell today with tomorrow's skills. And sales reps are out there, they're doing their thing. They kind of have a similar motion they go in. And so it's up to pre-sales to make sure we're developing those skills, we're hiring for those skills, and innovating internally so pre-sales can extend their value by being an innovation engine. And lastly, we haven't had a lot of pre-sales tech tools out there for a long time. Thank you. We have Presales Collective, we have Consensus, we have all these other tools out there. So now it's incumbent upon us to actually get with it and start quickly joining things like this and developing those skills.
Love it. Ron.
Yeah, I think I can just be at the end every time and say ditto and make this really easy for me. But no, like Lori, big fan of Consensus, not currently a customer. We've got some internal functionality that gives us a very similar capability, not quite the same, but similar. And a matter of fact, that's something that we launched on our website, a little choose your own adventure, and it's outperformed every other tool on the website as far as generating leads for the company. So, and that's just been a few weeks. But the other answer I want to give from the standpoint of, demo automation is we've got the scaling figured out. We've got a really good way to spool up new demo tenants and get those configured. The problem that we've been facing has been having the data in the environment to tell the proper stories to the prospects. So that's where we're investigating and looking to make some investments right now is in tools that will help us create this data so we can give a more rich experience for the prospects and tell a better story.
Makes a difference. All right, we're going to jump over to the Q&A panel for a minute. We're going to start with Jacob's question. There's a natural flow towards sales roles for SEs in many orgs. How would you suggest building up the credibility of SE as a career path to leadership? Ooh. Go.
It's tough, right? Because going back to earlier, like if you're going to be a high performer and you're going to drive straight towards, the demos you deliver, the close rates, like how you create relationships with sales reps, that's a primary way to be, important on the team. But the leadership component of it, like that's where I think Lori mentioned earlier, like who's volunteering for projects, who's coordinating with their peers, who's taking those steps kind of outside of the scope of the regular role. That's starting to give a key indicator of, to me anyways, of like who is on that path and who's a potential for leadership. The hard thing is it's going to be in addition to the role, right? And that's just the natural progression of how the business is. It'd be great if we could have a manager in training role in every team and then like dedicate somebody to it every year. And maybe you have the bandwidth to do that. I don't. And so I'm going to look to those folks on the team who are kind of taking those steps on their own and asking to take on additional projects and who's volunteering and who's going to take those extra steps.
Jumping on to Tony, I think it's three things, right? First thing is be incredibly good at what you're doing so that people notice. You got to be the expert at it. Number two, take on those extra projects, look for ways you can help. But number three, this is what a lot of people miss out. Let people know. Tell your manager that you're interested in this. Ask for it. You don't get things you don't ask for. You can't wait for things to be given to you.
Great point.
I'm loving this.
Yep.
There's some truth bombs. Who else? Who's next?
I don't know. I don't know
Anybody?
that we need to add on to it, right? I mean, I think those are
I think you may
really,
be right.
really solid points. Yeah.
I'm living this. Yeah,
I'll
seriously.
just say ditto to
Drop that mic.
Ron. If you have to
There
call
you
him,
go.
ditto to Ron and Tony.
So what I'm hearing there is that it's less about the credibility of the role and it's more about the individual. Like you differentiate yourself by your individual performance. You're not really worrying about whether the role matches or not. Fantastic. I love it. All right, let's jump to Ben. The trend of doing more with less can lead to burnout. How are you as leaders helping your teams and organizations address this? Ooh, and I have data. Go ahead.
I'll kick this one off. So I'm smiling because it's at SAP here. It's Mental Health Month and Mindfulness Month, and so as a part of our organization, we have a culture committee, and so we get together and we talk about how can we drive better culture, whether it be DE&I initiatives, whatever it is. Burnout is very real, especially when I was asked by my CRO recently, Brian, how many on-sites do you have out of your 10,000 demos? And I said 35. And he goes, oh, 35%? And I said 35. And so virtual fatigue is something that we get on our employee surveys quite often to say it's, we're getting burnt out here. And so we just had a session this morning where we focused virtually. We're on a virtual session talking about virtual fatigue. But we do things like, what can you do to take a step away from your desk? How can you do one-on-ones with your leader or your teams outside, getting out there and doing that? Whether you're in the office or remote, that both can still happen. What are you doing to provide self-care through, physical means, spiritual means, mental means? Those are really, really important. And for us, it's just providing a spotlight and intention on that helps us mitigate burnout for all of us, because none of us are immune from that.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to I agree with everything that you're saying, but I would also add, I think a good exercise to go through when some significant time has passed and the team is feeling it is do a session around stop, start, continue. What do we stop doing? What do we continue doing? Right?
Yes.
Because sometimes the business evolves so much in a short period of time, yet we're still doing the same old things. And does that still make sense to do? So can you free up some capacity with your team by getting rid of some non-value add work that just flat out doesn't need to be done anymore? So it's worthwhile doing a session to really assess that because there could be some bandwidth gain there. I mean, it's immediately going to be filled up with something else, but if they're able to have that sense of getting something off their plate, it could ease some of that burnout along with the suggestions Brian has with the team that they have going on.
I'll interject there with a little bit of data that the SE report that we are about to publish has some to say on burnout, where we can actually point to data that says that the amount of activities that you're doing that are, say, irrelevant or not moving the needle actually contribute hugely to burnout, as much to burnout as, say, long hours do, to the point where if you were to add, say, 10% to the percentage of demos that you have that you're doing that are unqualified, say, that are wasted demos, 10% more unqualified demos is the same as permanently adding like 4 or 5 hours to the work week in terms of burnout, in terms of predicting burnout, right? So the data doesn't lie. Yeah, exactly. Get a DQL strategy in place, maybe something like that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll say I love the stop, start, continue strategy, Lori. That's something that we definitely can do. There's 2 points I want to make. One, and I stole this from an old leader of mine. Her check-ins that she always had with me were about my wellness level. Right? Are you overwhelmed? Are you underwhelmed? Like, where are you at? And her point in saying that was, if I say I'm overwhelmed right now, and it's the heart of our busy season, it's challenging to make adjustments to help when you're in the moment. So having that open line of communication and comfort with your team to be able to say, like, well, what are you feeling? Like, if you're doing like, hey, I'm busy, I'm happy, I'm good. or, I feel like we could be doing more, or I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed. If I don't have a lead in, like I'm starting to feel like looking at my calendar coming up here, I'm going to get a little busy. Well, how can we mitigate that? How can we look ahead and plan out an additional long weekend or midweek break or something like that to accommodate that level of overwhelm? And the other thing that has been interesting, we had our annual sales meeting, and there was a great speaker that talked about kind of the neuroscience of happiness, which I'll figure out who it was because I can't name not coming to me at the moment. But we changed our team meetings to start off every single meeting with gratitude for each other on the team, like call outs of what it is. Because the point that the speaker had made was, if you can go 2 weeks of every day finding 3 things that you're grateful for, it actually changes like the neuroplasticity in your brain. Like it changes, and you look for things to be grateful for. So it's really easy in a team meeting to talk about challenges, struggles with sales reps, issues with the solutions, whatever it might be. So every meeting has been intentional that we start off with gratitude internally and say what we can thank each other for. And it's people who stepped up to help in a project. It's things where we just call out, when somebody was sick and who took over or did whatever. But every meeting starts that way. And I feel like it's had an impact on, what's been a bumpy start to the year for us, that the team is still holding strong.
Cool.
Tony, thank you for that. Gratitude.
That's
Thank
beautiful.
you. Go ahead, Ron.
You got it.
Grateful to be here. They're one who's smarter than me. The other thing I would add is there's only a finite amount of work that can be done. So doing more with less doesn't mean we're going to get it all done plus some extra stuff. I think we have to give ourselves and our teams the grace to understand we may not have enough capacity to get everything done that the organization would like done. And I think as leaders, our job is to understand, is someone putting out the appropriate amount of effort or not? And if they are, and we're not getting it all done, then we've got to voice that concern and say, look, we've cut too far, or we're going to have to set some other objectives aside.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll go ahead and go on to Mradula, who asks, they say, Essie from HubSpot here. Thanks for all these insights. Have your organizations experienced any changes in the SE-AE relationship given the macroeconomic climate, i.e. pre-sales being brought into deals earlier, being more heavily involved in each deal, having to work more low-fit deals potentially, things like that?
Yes.
Yes.
Not yes. Okay, so first of all, that relationship is constantly evolving, but given things that are going on these days, I would say absolutely yes. For us in our mid-market space, and I can see I have one of my enterprise SEs is in here too. He's commenting in the chat. In our mid-market space in particular, we are engaging in that first kind of business discussion call, right? It's oftentimes the first call that an AE has with that buyer, and we're getting in earlier. Our mid-market entry point is, really easy to walk away from, if you will, relative to our enterprise sales. So we're just getting in earlier, talking about business need relative to value without jumping straight to product first. So far, it's a little bit of a pilot right now, but working okay. We've already implemented something that we've really reinforced from a low fit deal perspective. We don't have the bandwidth to work those. So it's called, Peter, my SE is on here, right? It's called our opportunity qualifier. And there's some basic information that we need to understand. Is there a reason? What's the why? Why are we engaging in this dialogue? If there's a why, we can grab a hold of that and build on it. We've moved away from, I think probably most of us have moved away from really just looking at traditional BANT. There's so much more to the buyer's journey than just BANT. And if you really create a compelling enough case, you can help them find the budget. So there have been some, slight changes. I would agree that, yeah, we have seen some. I'll kick it off to someone else. That's fine.
I was going to say that earlier in the pipeline, so, attrition is going to happen every year. And I feel like with the way that it is right now, we saw a little bit more of it maybe. So we had a greener group in our sales organization. So we kind of instituted a couple more options in our demo booking tool around having a strategy call and talking about that deal ahead of time. And, being that additional resource to say, let's look at the client. What do they have? What do you know so far? Like, what would be the right things to to ask in a discovery call to understand and get to that why that you mentioned, Lori. And I think it's interesting about, building those SE-AE relationships. You got to be able to show some value in those regards. And then we also said, well, okay, now we know here's a couple questions to ask. You don't want the rep to turn into the deer in the headlights when they ask a question and the customer says, oh, that's great. What about this? And they go, I don't know. So we also then can do a ride along on those same discovery calls, establish some rapport with the client, and then we're on that demo, and it's a much more targeted, final step in the process. So we've expanded where we fit in our sales process quite a bit more upstream.
It's a slippery slope, though, right? Like coming in earlier is actually a slippery slope.
Right. I mean, we've tried to qualify all of that by saying this is a learning experience. We're not on every call with you. Like, we want to give you some baselines to then take and run with yourself. We do not have the bandwidth to run every discovery call with every SE by any stretch. But you're right. It's something we've been monitoring on a weekly basis just to make sure that we don't have those folks who may take advantage of it.
Lori, we have added not just Bant, but Bantalicious. I don't know what Bantalicious stands for, but it's so complicated they can't, it's a dad joke. I'm sorry, okay. Because you're right, it is complicated and it's more than just that. So you can use that acronym, say you have to pass the Bantalicious acronym. They're like, well, what is that? Well, do that. No, we actually, I have a real innovative leader in the ANZ region, Australia and New Zealand, and she is using digital to qualify her engagement on deals. And so it's a digital first mentality. And so we precede our discoveries or our demos, depending where we are in the life cycle of the deal. And she determines whether or not she's going to assign a resource to that deal on whether or not they watched a demo. And we can correlate that if somebody watches that demo, the more they watch it, first they have to engage in it, and then if they watch it for about 15 minutes, we can see a 65% win rate. And so we've given that back to the sales to help them understand you have to use digital to help qualify these out, to remove those low fits, to have real demo qualified leads. That's kind of the DQL mentality. And then we actually have reps who buy into this concept because they're increasing their forecast accuracy because people are actually engaging in the content. And we know that 83% of their deals are outside of talking to an actual person. You kind of referred to that earlier, Tony. Ron, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, I think it's been some subtle changes to the relationship. I think the environment impacts the AEs a bit more, at least emotionally, maybe, than the SEs, because they're really more worried about how they're going to make their quota. So I think the tendency to bring the SEs in earlier is a little bit of what resources do I have to help me get anything going? And so I think that's kind of been what's forcing that motion a bit.
Absolutely.
I'll make one little point on that too, because I feel like, there is that tendency that Lori mentioned of like, who's going to take advantage and can they just rely on you solely for that stage early on? I think it goes in tandem a little bit with, I did a session yesterday on training sales from the pre-sales space. And if you can get those early inroads with reps to get the right level of qualification for your demos, you're benefiting the pre-sales team too, to get the same outcome you're talking about, Brian. Right? Like, the more that they use digital early on in the process and set them up for success and ask the right questions to follow that and make sure, if they're leveraging something like digital automation that can close the low-hanging fruit deals. They don't need to throw them in a demo. Let them spend the time with the ones who need it. But it's a lot of that kind of connectivity of how can we make those behaviors that the SE team needs. You want to get the best qualified demos getting your way. Train those reps the best way you know how. And it's the same thing that the reps would do on a call anyways.
Yeah.
All right. We're getting kind of down to the wire here. We've got room for a couple more questions. I love this one from Luvia. What advice do you have for those currently trying to break into pre-sales? Now, maybe there's a framework here. We often talk about the three-legged stool for pre-sales, right? We have industry expertise, soft skills, and technical acumen, right? But maybe that's the framework. Maybe that's no longer the framework. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I still think that framework it applies, but I think all of us as leaders can agree it's very rare to find someone who's coming into the profession that has all three legs of that stool. I think, John, you and I at one point, I just called them a unicorn, right?
Yep.
Every now and then you do find one, but very, very rare. So I would say, I mean, my advice is upskill. Each one of those three legs of the stool, you can accomplish through upskilling yourself, right? Whether you're taking classes or webinars on working on your presentation skills, or diving deeper into more industry knowledge by staying up to date and current and really digging in and understanding and making sure you know what's going on in the industry you might be trying to break into. For me, I think in general, in this short amount of time, it comes down to upskill, grow.
All right.
Just to add a little bit to that, I talk to a lot of people, maybe too many people sometimes, about who are wanting to break in. And I was looking, some of them are actually in this session. So, hey guys, good to see y'all here. I think the first thing that I would suggest for someone wanting to break into this industry is develop their point of view on it, have a unique position on it, and then make yourself known. Whatever platform you want to choose, be active on that platform, get yourself out there and get some exposure. There are a lot of great resources. We mentioned some of them in Presales Collective and some of the other groups where you can get all this great content for free. This is a great platform here. So I've told a lot of people about coming to DEMOFEST, a free thing where you can get all kinds of incredible content. But then the other thing I think is really important is I tell them, you know, you're bringing something to the table. I don't care if you worked at the pool supply store or you've been doing career counseling for university. You have experience somewhere. Look for software that job, that industry would use, and start trying to break in there, because you come to the table to someone like us with some immediate value that we can take advantage of. So lean into what you already know.
Yep, that's a great point.
I'll add to this. I know when somebody's running to pre-sales or running from something else. And so really check your heart, know your passion. And if you're running to pre-sales, to Ron's point, everybody here, there's a lot of really good resource out there. Be dedicated, be intentional, and study up on that. There is no pre-sales degree, right? Right now, you're not going to pre-sales and you can get a sales degree at James Madison University. We have a few folks that actually have a degree in sales, but that doesn't exist. One of my favorite folks that I've worked with and brought into pre-sales is Stephanie Day, who's at Snow Software. Hi, Stephanie, if we're out there. She's a cultural anthropologist by trade. And that's what I love about pre-sales, whether it's pool supply skills. How did you know that was my background, Ron? That's how I got into pre-sales. Just kidding. But you take somebody with a diversity, because that's important. You bring those skill sets in, and that's, I think, what makes pre-sales such a cool profession. If you're running to it, there are resources out there now in a centralized place, and you can build a career out of it. Who knew that there was this thing called pre-sales? So that'd be my thoughts.
Best kept hidden secret, right? Pre-sales.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Best job in sales. Yeah, for sure. Now, and this was mentioned earlier too, but just be vocal to your leaders, right? Like if there's a pre-sale leader that's in your org and you want to ask questions, like express your interest. Like I've gotten to a point now where I've got like a list of, half a dozen to 10 people who are interested in joining the team. I don't have any openings at the moment, but I know, and they're asking to shadow and they're spending more time with the team and trying to get to know, like, what are the things that happen to the job? And Brian, your point's 100% on, right? If they're running to it, they want to learn more about it. If they're running from something, they just want to go somewhere where they don't have a quota necessarily. And that's a really, really key differentiator to keep in mind.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead, and I think this might be a great one to end on. This one just came in from Katie. What were the skills that you all honed that brought you into pre-sales and led to your success?
Yeah, I actually wanted to move into pre-sales. The company was Infor at the time, and they said no. I was like, I'm sorry, what?
What? And here you are, Lori.
I was on the development side of the house, right? So I was a programmer. They said, you don't have the expertise yet. I'm like, fine. How do I go get that, right? So I had to move into professional services to build the technical aspect that I needed, as well as the industry aspect that we were selling into. We were selling an ERP into manufacturing and distribution. I knew nothing about them. I was straight out of college. So I had to acquire the ability to learn about software, how it was used, the benefit of it. and then learn how to speak about it in terms of industry. I had the soft skills. I had to get those other 2 legs.
Love it. All right, who's next? Come on, don't be shy.
So in 1998, I was the geek who could speak, right? Software just came naturally. And again, there were maybe just 4 packages back then, but no, seriously, it came naturally. My buddy hired me into my first job as a pre-sales person, as a systems engineer, and it's just been so much fun. I had to learn the sales aspect of it, so that was something that was really interesting to learn. And then kind of as I got into that and got into my leadership roles, I really had it in the emotional intelligence piece. And that's been something that's really helped my success.
Yeah, that's big. Good point.
I have a weird path and another life I was in the journalism realm, which that's played a big role in asking the right questions and kind of coaching the team in that regard. But when I came into TR, I was a support representative first. I got into training consulting, and that was in that kind of, the tell, teach, tell methodology, which then parallels great into tell, demo, tell, but you do have to then pick up, just like you said, Ron, the sales acumen. That was what I had to immerse myself in because I had zero exposure to it as far as within TR. So, shadowing the sales reps and just kind of getting an understanding of what they deal with to build that empathy that's really necessary to have a strong partnership between your AEs and SEs. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
There was a lot in that. There was a lot in that short little statement there.
There's a lot
Empathy
to
with, empathy with the AEs and all kinds of stuff in there. Hit pause and rewind on the session if you're watching the recording. Cool. Brian.
So, somewhat of a similar path, actually, Lori, done development, and I was in professional services at a CRM company many years ago, decades ago. And I was out there on a grind, month over month, week over week, traveling, doing a lot, implementing the software that those sales yahoos would actually be closing. And there's a sales rep and this other guy that always was with a salesperson. And I wanted what they had. Like they're going to club, they're, 2 or 3 days gone at a time to some really cool places. Hawaii's on the West Coast in our territory. I'm like, I don't know what they're having. So I started asking questions and found out sales engineer, what is that? And so I got into it. And also, I remember in college, I have a speech comm degree, which actually is pretty helpful if you're going to be going in and talking and working with buyers and whatnot out there. And I didn't want to have a career in sales whatsoever. I'm like, that is not me. I'm not doing it. Joke's on me because here we are. But I had to learn that sales acumen. So I went from professional services. How do I help people utilize and really consume the software we're getting? To how do I develop a different skill and a talk track around just landing the customer or expanding that customer relationship, which we do in a pre-sales and a sales fashion. So for me, it was really taking the communication skills, taking the industry experience and the technical knowledge, Lori, that we developed in professional services to then bring that forward in a shorter kind of mini project, sometimes a day or 2 at a time when you're talking to the buyer.
Fantastic. Thanks all. I think that's about all we have time for. I just want to, I'll close out by saying this is the kind of session that to me is what I love about DEMOFEST. I love sessions where we get in, we ask some maybe hard questions, we get the absolute best in the industry to come along and answer some of those hard questions for us. And, I like to say it's where pre-sales disrupts pre-sales. So, you become the next iteration rather than getting replaced by the next iteration. It's a wonderful thing. So thanks everybody for your participation. It's been super helpful. So we'll go ahead and just close up here. I want to give a quick shout out to the DEMOFEST game. We want to remind everybody that there is a game going on, and each session you attend, you get and you leave session feedback or anything like that, you get points to win some of these prizes that we're emailing out afterwards. There are AirPods, there are Yeti coolers, there are Masterclass account, there are books, signed books, and all the rest of it. So go ahead and keep on that. And we are also very excited to bring DEMOFEST on the road as DEMOFEST X. We've had a couple of sessions already this year, and we call it DemoFest X. We had a great time in San Francisco in March. Cannot wait to bring the event to Dublin, London, and New York City later this year. So here are the dates. I'm hoping that everybody can see those. They're a little bit fine print down there at the bottom. You can register to join us at any of these events at demofest.com, which is also at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. We also encourage you to stop by our expo hall to visit our premier partners of DemoFest. Remember, there's no transfer of money involved in this event. So all of our, I mean, it's an expensive event, but we don't pay presenters. We don't pay, nobody pays for a booth or anything like that. So it's all just people who have helped to make the event what it is. Here's a quick glance as we have 5 seconds left at the next sessions. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you in the next one.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Good stuff.
Good stuff,
Thank
y'all.
you guys.
Great
Thanks
session.
all. Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.